Welcome to class tonight. I do hope that you are doing well. Now, we're going to be finishing this chapter with a section about transformations. No, Optimus Prime will not be joining us tonight, but we will be using three specific terms. Now, I want to go ahead and emphasize that these three terms, so the three terms you see on the board right here, these three terms are part of this. So all of these are examples of transformations. Okay? So translation, rotation, and reflection are all examples of transformations. Okay? So I want to emphasize that. All right, so first, our first transformation we're going to be talking about is what we call a translation. Now you see the definition right there on the board. Translation is simply moving every point of a figure to the same distance and the same direction. Now I want to emphasize the fact that the shape is not changing at all. Now you see at the very bottom, you see the book here. On the book you see this shape is simply moving, simply sliding up. And that's another term we can actually use, slide. Now at the very bottom we see some examples. Now this first one, we see the arrow pointing that way and the arrow actually changes direction. That is not a rotation. Okay, we did not move every point the same distance in the same direction. Okay, so it's not a rotation. But this, however, is the example of a rotation because every point is moved the same distance and the same direction. So that is key. So that's our first one, translation. The next one we're going to be talking about is what we call a reflection. Now, a reflection is simply flipping a figure over a line of reflection. Okay, so you see there on our example right here, we see a figure right there, and then we see a line of reflection. And then on the opposite side of that line, you see the exact opposite figure. Okay, so this is an example of a reflection. We see the exact opposite thing. Now you can think about this in terms of just general science. A mirror gives us a reflection. Okay, so it gives us the exact opposite. The figure flipped over a line. That's what a mirror gives us. Okay, so the other term we can use is reflection. You can see here at the bottom right here, you see the other example. See that figure is flipped over that line of reflection. The last one we're going to talk about is what we call a rotation. Now, rotation is simply turning a figure about a point. And so you see this figure right here. I simply turn the figure so it looks like this. Now, turn is the other term that we can use to show what we're talking about with a rotation. So three terms we're going to talk about: translation or slide, reflection or flip, and then rotation or turn. All right, let's go and do a little practice then. Now, this first example here is actually not a translation because you see I actually flipped the figure. So this is not an example of a translation right there. But this is an example of a translation. I have a figure right here, and I'm simply going to slide it out. The exact same points, moving the same distance. I did not change the figure at all. I simply moved it. So I can slide it all around there. Okay? So that is a transition. We can do lots more like that. Next, a reflection. Now, with our reflection, once again, we're simply flipping the figure across a line of reflection. And you see right here, I've actually put our lines of reflection right there. Now, with these, I'm simply asking you to do your best. I understand you're going to see my examples are going to be probably pretty bad. Okay? So I'm simply asking you to do your best on this. Now, with the reflection, all we're going to do is I'm going to take this figure right here, take that figure, and I'm going to flip it over that line. So I would start at my baseline. I'm going to go ahead and make my diagonal. Okay? And yeah, once again, it's pretty bad, but it's somewhat close. And that's what I'm looking for. So on your homework tonight, when they ask you to make a flip or make a reflection, just get pretty close. Same thing over here. This one's actually going to be a good bit easier because all I have to do is line and then make a right angle. So that one's going to be a little bit better actually. So this is simply what we're talking about when we say reflection or flip. I'm just flipping it over a line of reflection. Last thing, rotation. Now, with this right here, with this first one we see, this first one is a good example of a rotation because all I did, I took this figure and I rotated it just like that. Okay, so I'm going to keep that back. So this is a good example of a rotation. This, however, you see, this example is a very bad example because any way I turn it, I cannot make it the exact same figure. Remember, it has to be the exact same figure. So that is not the exact same figure. So that is not an example of a rotation. So we're going to go ahead and cross that one out. Alright, finally, I'm going to show you a very good example. Now, I know you guys can't do this on your sheet, but I'm showing you what's going on. If I want to make a rotation out of this triangle here, I pull one out. With this, I'm simply going to turn it. So bam, right there, I have a rotation. I turned it about a point. Okay? So the point in this case is the very center. So I turned it about that very center, and that is an example of a rotation. Now, with the reflection, I do want to emphasize, because this is probably the trickier of the three terms. Okay, so let's go and look at this check understanding here at the bottom. This is once again page 417. So on the bottom we hear, so this is the figure, okay, and we need to rotate that figure. Now, it has to be the exact same image, simply rotated. Now you see this is actually flipped. Okay, so this is a bad example because if you put a line of reflection right there, you would see the exact same thing. Okay, it would be flipped. Now this one right here, that is actually going to be pretty close, so let's come back to that. Now this one right here, if I were to turn that shape any way, I would never get that shape right there. So the best answer in this case, in the check understanding, is going to be B, because all I would do is simply take that figure and rotate it or turn it around so it eventually would look like that. On your homework, once again, I'm not asking to be perfect, just get pretty close. Well, that is our lesson tonight. This should all be more of a review, but as always, if you have any questions, please let me know and bring them to class. Your homework tonight is going to be page 417, 1 through 13 odd. Once again, page 417, 1 through 13 odd. Have a great night, and we'll see you all tomorrow.